They have been great sluggers in their careers. Lance Berkman of the Cardinals. Back at it again in 2011, and so is that guy, Todd Helton, the first baseman of the Colorado Rockies. We're at Coors Field in Denver. Big crowd expected tonight. The St. Louis Cardinals at 30-21 taking on the Colorado Rockies, a game under 500. And along with Rick Horton, I'm Dan McLaughlin. Welcome to Cardinals Baseball. And Ricky, when you think about this series over the years, it's been a lot of fun.
It really has, and I think you look at the guys in the middle of the lineup, and you're just so excited to watch them play. Here's the series totals, 78 and 79. And a lot of the runs that you see, the team ERA, affected by playing in this ballpark here in Colorado. But we've had some great moments, some well-pitched games, and it'll be fun to watch again this weekend.
And you have some sluggers that, on base percentage-wise, have been, in their careers, some of the best.
Yeah, those sluggers will be fun to watch. Todd Helton, Albert Pujols, Lance Berkman, they're 1, 2, 3 among active players in on-base percentage. It means they can hit, but they also know how to get on base via the walk. So you've got to control the middle of the lineup, and of course Tulowitzki is one of the best players in this game, Dan, and he's not having a good season, only Helton over 300.
All right, we'll take a quick timeout. When we come back, we'll look at the starters for tonight. Jake Westbrook, the sinker baller, and Ubaldo Jimenez, still looking for his first win. Kyle Loesch getting in some work as he'll make a start here on Sunday afternoon. Speaking of starting, let's meet your starters here tonight.
Jake Westbrook will go for the Cardinals. He's had 2 outstanding outings in a row, 15 innings, just 1 earned run. He's making his 11th start and seems to have found his groove. On the other side, Ubaldo Jimenez has had a very tough year. He's looking for win number 1. He's not giving up a lot of hits, but he's walking a lot of batters, and he's giving up big hits that score runs, looking again for win number 1 here tonight.
Both these teams have suffered injuries in their rotation. We'll talk about that when we come back. Missing aces when we return to Colorado. Albert Pujols is in the lineup for the Cardinals here tonight. Game 1 from Coors Field. Along with Rick Horton, I'm Dan McLaughlin. And Ricky, these two teams are dealing with injuries this season.
Very similar problems. Adam Wainwright hurt in spring training. Very difficult to replace him, but the Cardinals have had great years from Kyle Loesch and Kyle McClellan. Jorge De La Rosa was 5-2. He just went out, and he'll be out for the rest of the season. He will be more difficult to replace.
Coming up, it's our first pitch. Starting lineups from Denver, Colorado. The Cardinals and the Rockies next on Fox Sports Midwest.
Cardinals baseball on Fox Sports Midwest is brought to you by Budweiser. Great times are waiting. Grab some Buds. By Chevy, see your Mid-America Chevy dealers. By Southwest Airlines, new Rapid Rewards. Unlimited reward seats and no blackout dates. By Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers, #1 in quality tires and expert auto service. And by Steak and Shake. Life needs flavor.
Ubaldo Jimenez is finishing up his warm-up tosses along with Rick Horton. I'm Dan McLaughlin, and we are set to go for baseball here tonight. Let's take a look at Tony La Russa's lineup minus the former Rocky Matt Holliday. And this is brought to you by Southwest Airlines with Terrio, Jay, and Pujols, Berkman, Craig, Rasmus, Molina, Descalso, and the pitcher Jake Westbrook.
Good thing you've got so much production up and down that lineup. You missed Matt Holliday just a little bit less. Ubaldo Jimenez getting the start tonight in Colorado. He's had a rough season, Dan. Just has not gotten it together, cannot throw strikes like he did last year, and he's 0-4.
And the defense behind the big right-hander who was spectacular a year ago, Gonzalez, Young, and Spielborg's in the outfield. Ty Wigginton, Tulowitzki, Herrera, and Helton along the infield. And it's Jimenez and Chris Iannetta, the battery tonight. That's presented by Dobbs. And we're underway. The first pitch taken for a ball by Ryan Terrio. One ball, one strike. Say Jimenez not throwing nearly as hard as he has done in the last couple of years, where he averaged a fastball that was at 96 miles an hour.
One of the issues he had in spring training, he actually had a problem with a cuticle on one of his fingers in his pitching hand. And you say, oh, come on, seriously? That's going to keep you from throwing the ball right? But it does, because of the pressure and the pain that he felt. So he altered his delivery a bit. and he just hasn't been able to get back on track, although his last 2 outings, Dan, have been much, much better, and he deserved to win in both of them.
Yeah, he threw a 2-hitter and lost the game. How many times do you only allow 2 hits and lose? The 1-2 pitch to Ryan Theriot. Another foul ball. That pitch at 95 from Jimenez.
A lot of credit, Dan, to be passed around amongst the Cardinals for why they are off to such a good start. 9 games over 500. But I think what Ryan Theriot and John Jay now are doing at the top of the lineup is maybe one of the underrated things. You look at what Berkman's done and Holiday and the starting pitchers, but these 2 guys have gotten on base consistently.
And a swing and a miss by Theriot, and that's how we start the game. So just 1 quality start over his first 6 of the season as you get a look at the off-speed pitch, or rather the fastball that was on the outside corner.
Had good movement for a fastball, and it has such a herky-jerky motion too, Dan. I mean, he's really almost hard to follow, and that's part of his deceptiveness. When you're deceptive and you throw 95, you could be very tough to handle.
John Jay looks at a strike. Quite a road trip for John Jay. And the more he produces, the more playing time he has seen. There's that breaking ball. He's got the 12-6 bender, and when he's right, he is very, very good.
Well, he has the primary pitch, but he also has the secondary pitch. And, you know, John Jay has not been really overmatched by anybody in the at-bats we've seen on this road trip. He's on a 6-game hit streak. You see there, good quality at-bats every time. You know, there were times last year, Dan, after he got off to the great start, slowed towards the end of the year, you thought maybe there were some pitchers that were kind of carving him up. But I think he's back on track right now and doing a great job filling in.
And the 1-2 pitch to John Jay. Laces it out to left field. That ball will get down and go to the wall. John Jay continues his torrid hitting right now. Left fielder Gonzalez gets it back in. And John Jay with a 1-out double, and it brings in Albert.
Spacious outfield in left center field. In fact, John Jay is playing left field instead of right field in this game for that reason, and he finds that gap. 390 in the power alley. It's a big ballpark, but it's still a hitter's ballpark.
So Jay is now 12 of his last 28 here on this road trip, and here is Albert Pujols. Speaking with Albert before the game, he has tremendous respect for Todd Helton down at first, and he mentioned longevity in the game and what Helton has meant to this franchise.
One of the best players in the last decade.
Runners in scoring position this season. Pujols at 320.
And like Albert, he does some other things. He's good with the glove. But defensively, the Rockies are top 6 in the National League. They're very good up the middle, especially with Tulowitzki. He only has 2 errors on the season at short. Very solid player.
And the Rockies have struggled here at home. They are 12-13. And overall, a game under the 500 mark for Jim Tracy. Remember, this is a team that started out 11-2.
Worst major league record in the month of May belongs to the Rockies. Notice the shadows here at Coors Field. We always deal with those.
That's a base hit into right field. Here comes John Jay. He will score easily, and it's 1-0.
One of the jobs of a middle infielder is making sure the guy leading off second does not get a big lead. John Jay, in this case, the second baseman Herrera, very close to the bag. That opens the hole on the right side of the infield and leads to a Cardinal run.
RBI number 27 for Pujols. And it brings in the switch hitting Lance Berkman. You know, we travel around and we talk to the other broadcasters, and they say, what is the deal with Lance Berkman? What's gotten into this guy? healthy.
Well, it's amazing how I think it's amazing how people gave up on him so quickly. It's not like he had 3 bad years in a row and, you know, just fell off the face of the earth. I mean, he just had an injury-plagued season. And, I mean, he had 274, 25 homers, 80 RBIs in 2009 with Houston. Not his best numbers, but still pretty good. And I would say you probably could have expected that from him this year, but he's giving you a lot more.
And Berkman skies one on the infield to Lewitzki. That took a while to come down. That's a major league pop-up right there.
Right air. Altitude.
Good to see that Pujols went with the pitch to right field. There are some that believe that he's been pulling off a lot of pitches lately, maybe too pull conscious.
And even when he does go the other way, the swing hasn't seemed right. It almost seems like he's slicing it a bit instead of staying with the front shoulder in and driving the ball the other way. Again, there's a nuance of difference mechanically from one to the other, but Albert just hasn't seemed right. And no, he's not that far off, but clearly the production with extra base hits especially has been dramatic. You think about not just the home runs, Dan, but the doubles.
Here's Alan Craig. Craig at 303 this year. They set up inside. Down on the field before the game, Alan Craig was out there early, Rick, and one of the things that they're trying to really work on him with is turning the double play at second base. Now, if he's going to be a second baseman, if they're going to give him these kind of starts, you'd like to see him be able to stay in a game longer than just 5 innings.
Yeah, talk about your crash course at the big league level. Okay, we're going to teach you how to turn a double play. And by the way, you know, whatever it is you do is going to be on TV all across the world tonight, and get it quickly.
Craig hits it out of play, and Pujols was off with the pitch. Probably had it stolen too. He had a very good jump. 1-2 is our count.
Jimenez has a fairly long delivery home, but once he delivers it, it gets home in a hurry.
Crowd still filing in. It's a Coors Field here in Denver. Pujols is not running. That pitch is taken for a ball. And it's 2-2. Remember I mentioned to you, Rick, the other day that Arizona's schedule, as you get a look at what Pujols has done in his career with the steal attempts, Arizona is now just a game and a half out, and they've got a very easy portion of their schedule coming up. Craig sharply to Tulowitzki, makes the play. Pujols picks up the RBI, and it's 1-0. One to nothing after a half inning of play as we welcome you back to Denver, Colorado, and beautiful Coors Field. The lineup for Jim Tracy, presented by Southwest Airlines. Young, Herrera, Gonzalez, Tulowitzki, Helton, Wigginton, Spilborghs, Iannetta, and Ubaldo Jimenez. Still looking for his first hit. And welcome back to the big leagues. Switch hitting, Eric Young Jr.
Young was batting .363 in Colorado Springs, the AAA ball club for the Rockies. He had 17 stolen bases, and they're trying to get a little offense going. They've really struggled as a team. This should be a better team offensively, and they're hoping he'll be a spark plug.
Well, Eric Young Jr., his natural position is second base, but this kid can absolutely fly. And you talked about how spacious it is in the outfield as you see the numbers for Jake Westbrook, who's been very good as of late. And they've got him in center field. It's one of the things that he went to the minor leagues to work on, is to play the outfield because he can run so well.
The other center fielder, Dexter Fowler, who we've liked in spurts, has been striking out too much in the leadoff spot. He's among the league leaders in strikeouts, which you cannot have in your leadoff batter. And he's also had trouble stealing bases. He's been thrown out more than anybody in the National League, Dexter Fowler has. Had some good games against the Cardinals in his young career. But the Rockies just looking for somebody that can get that job done in the leadoff spot.
What has been very surprising to many around baseball, the lack of offense and hitting for this Rockies club, as Terrio on the run makes the play.
Jake Westbrook, sinker ball pitcher, could be just the right thing for a place like Coors Field, trying to keep the ball down. Goes over his head in his delivery, has a pretty fast delivery, which actually makes him short arm the ball a bit. He doesn't really reach way back and really just tries to stay on top and let his finger pressure make the ball sink. That one a little flat, but still strike one.
Westbrook selected by the Colorado Rockies first round. 21st overall back in 1996. The switch hitter is Jonathan Herrera. The 1-1 pitch. Another ground ball that's pulled foul. It's part of the Mike Lansing deal. He was also acquired by the New York Yankees. That was the Hideki Irabu deal. Another ground ball that's pulled foul. 1 ball and 2 strikes. And another example of a major leaguer that has made it back from Tommy John. And the Rockies are hoping that'll be the case with Jorge De La Rosa, who was to start on Sunday afternoon, but he's out, and Tommy John is forthcoming.
Yeah, you know, if you're a fan of the game of baseball, you really want to see the best players play. It's just such a shame for the game to lose a pitcher like him, and you know, they were counting on him to be probably a 2-starter for them, and they're going to miss him, and I don't think they have very many plan Bs.
Strikeout, the first of the night for Jake Westbrook.
Painting that outside corner early on with the sinker. Nice job of framing that pitch by Yadier Molina. He's done that before.
So De La Rosa, who many teams coveted in the offseason, to give you an idea how things have changed here in Colorado, a pitcher actually said, yeah, I'd like to stay. I want to pitch in this ballpark. And the humidor, if you're wondering, is still in effect.
It's still the #1 offensive ballpark as rated by players and fans and statistician folks. It's still the place you want to hit. How about that kick saving a beauty?
Kick saving a beauty is right. A 1-2-3 inning for Westbrook, and it's 1-0 after 1. Toyota keys to the game, the Cardinals. And last season, what they did at Coors Field, then at Busch Stadium. And that ERA of 8.03 doesn't help.
A pretty marked difference between Busch Stadium and Coors Field. Really, if you're going to pitch in this ballpark, and Dan, you alluded to it, talking about De La Rosa wanting to stay here, you have got to overcome mentally the thought of pitching in a place like this. You just have to put it out of your mind. It's like being a left-hander at Fenway, or being a pitcher at Wrigley Field. You just got to just pitch and let it take care of itself.
Rasmus with a base hit into right field. That's good to see. Maybe the off day and then not playing in the final game in San Diego will help him regenerate a little bit here, because it looked like he was rolling on fumes.
Yeah, he needed that. That broke an 0 for 20, and that starts to wear on you. The bigger that number gets, you know, if you're 0 for 4 at this level, you say, that's okay, I'll get him tomorrow. 0 for 8, all right, I'll get him tomorrow, but I'm not quite so happy. When you're 0 for 20, you're wearing that. I mean, you are wearing that all day long, and you know it. You know that number, and you just want to get off the dime somehow, and that's nice to see him hit that line drive to right.
Strike 2, Yadier Molina. He said that Pujols did that Molina is his little brother. He said, I'm proud of the way that he has played this year. Runner is going. Great jump by Rasmus. The tag was there, but Colby in safely. Tulowitzki almost got him on the helmet.
I think Yadier Molina saw how big a jump that was. I'm not sure if that's a straight steal or a hit and run, but I think Yadi saw the big jump and just let him go. If he had any thoughts about swinging, you can see the jump if you're a right-handed batter that the base runner gets, particularly if it's a good one. And Rasmus That's an area that you'd like to see him get better at. 4 out of 5 now in stolen bases. I still think he can be a 25 stolen base guy someday.
1-2 on Molina. And since May 12th, how about that? Yadier Molina, the highest batting average at .404. John Jay also among the league leaders.
Cardinal fans remember Seth Smith last year had a big series against the Cardinals. He was just hard to get out. In fact, another guy that was hard to get out was Ian Stewart. And Stewart is now a hurt player in AAA all of a sudden. He's fallen off the face of the earth, and really just exactly what's happened to this Rockies offense.
Yeah, they were counting on him to put together a big year. And they've signed long-term deals with Tulowitzki as well as Carlos Gonzalez, and those two have not gotten off to very good starts.
Still got the right guys, though.
The 2-2 pitch to Molina. Up the middle. Oh, a diving stop at second base. What a play there by Herrera. That's an outstanding play up the middle. Takes the hit and RBI away.
Great athleticism by Herrera. Looks like it's a base hit up the middle. He closes the ground, pops up quickly, plants and throws all in one motion. That is a very, very difficult play.
Colby Rasmus safe at third, safe and secure. New York Life. So an outstanding play there made by Jonathan Herrera. And now you have Descalso, and the infield is in.
And at least it accomplished the ground ball to the right side, getting Colby Rasmus to third.
Descalso to Helton, who's won a Gold Glove before. Play at the plate, and he got him. Hit it right on the button, but Helton playing in. Rasmus was off with contact. Just a very good play there by Todd Helton.
I'm not sure what Colby Rasmus was coached to do here, but I just don't know why you take off there. I mean, yes, the pitcher's coming up next. You're trying to make something happen, force a bad throw. If the ball's hit softly to an infielder, you go on contact, but that was a rocket. He's got no chance of being safe. You know the infielders are in. You either go if it's hit softly or wait until it gets through the infield and you can just walk home.
Todd Helton, a guy that has been dealing with back spasms this year. You see Westbrook is 2 for 16. And Helton has talked about with his back, hurts when he sleeps or he's running. That's a fair ball, and Westbrook is out at first. Midway through 2, and it's 1-0. Well, the Cardinals waste a very good opportunity in the top of the second, and it's 1-0. Beautiful city of Denver, Colorado. A look at the Cardinals defense tonight with Jay, Rasmus, and Berkman in the outfield. Descalso, Terrio, Craig, and Pujols along the infield, and our battery tonight, Jake Westbrook and Yadier Molina. That's presented by Dobbs, as Westbrook had an easy 1-2-3 first inning.
And you talk about the Cardinals wasting that opportunity in the second. It is a waste, although they did, Dan, hit 2 balls right on the money. Daniel Descalso, Yadier Molina, both ended up in outs. But again, credit the good Rockies infield defense. Herrera and Helton for keeping this a 1-0 game.
Well, earlier, as you see some of those numbers for Tulowitzki, earlier this year against the Mets, he had a series. He was 10 for 16 with 4 home runs. And you might remember what he did in September, one of the greatest finishes in the history of baseball for 1 month. His September was just remarkable. 15 home runs, 40 RBIs.
Multiply those numbers times 6.
Pretty good year.
I'll say.
They say he needs a habit, though, outside of baseball, because he is a self-proclaimed baseball junkie.
Needs a little balance, Dan?
Yeah. And sometimes he puts a lot of pressure on himself to perform. And he's a terrific talent. Great player. Just signed a 7-year, $134 million extension.
I think there's something to what you're talking about with a major league player, really any professional athlete who's so wound up and geared up. You've got to find a release for that. You've got to find something else that is creative, get your mind off of what you do. A lot of players, of course, we know a lot of Cardinal players, particularly pitchers, play golf. For many, it's that, but just something. You know, a lot of guys that hunt and fish throughout the season. Something to get you thinking about something other than your job.
And this can be such a mental grind for 6 months, and for a guy that can't get away from it, that's tough. The 3-2 pitch, taken for a ball outside and low. So a walk to Tulowitzki, and it brings in Todd Helton. Well, on Sunday, a tornado damaged homes and took the lives of many in Joplin, Missouri. Big part of our Cardinals viewing area. Convoy of Hope is a Springfield, Missouri-based international disaster relief agency that has been one of the first to provide emergency assistance to the people of Joplin, and you can help donate by texting the word convoy to 50555. $10 to Convoy of Hope. Here's Todd Helton. 309, 6 home runs, and 22 driven in this year. Saw Westbrook in his last start pick off a man at first.
All about the quick feet.
You know, Pujols isn't sure if he should wear glasses or not. He's got sunglasses in his back pocket. As Helton, way out in front, pulls it foul.
There was a little funny thing going on in the first inning between Pujols and Barry Weinberg, and he kept asking for the sunglasses, and then the sun would go behind the clouds, and he'd say, never mind, and Barry would stop, and then the sun would come out again, and he'd ask for him again. They just went back and forth about 3 times. And, you know, you always deal with shadows here at this ballpark. And you deal with the light air, you deal with the spacious outfield, and you just have to overcome all those things.
And tomorrow, it's a 5 o'clock start, so that'll definitely be in play.
There's no doubt.
One and two.
I do love some of the views inside Coors Field here, Dan. I love the green trees out in center field and just the sight lines. I think this is just a wonderful baseball park, and it was really almost ahead of its time in some ways when it was first built.
The 1-2 pitch off the plate. Pujols will tag out Todd Helton, and there's one away. Ahead of its time in what regard?
Well, I just think the style. I think, you know, the open look of the stadium. Not that it was the first stadium like that, but it just feels like a baseball park to me. Very kind of fan friendly, and they've always drawn well here at this ballpark. Nice crowd here tonight. And I think the crowds are starting to come back to baseball a little bit too. Attendance was down early the first month of the season. Bad weather influenced that a lot, but I think when the Cardinals come back home, we're going to see a ton of folks come out to the ballgame.
That's a base hit out to left. Tulowitzki being waved in. He will score. The throw goes into second base, and we're tied up at 1-1. Ty Wigginton, his 13th RBI.
Leadoff walks kill you. Jake Westbrook is a guy that throws strikes more often than not, but Tulowitzki's on second base because of the leadoff walk. He's advanced to second on a little infield ground ball by Helton, and just like that, the Rockies get the hit the Cardinals didn't get in the top of the second.
Ryan Spilborgh's the right fielder. Something they've also done here at the ballpark to help the pitcher out a little bit The infield grass has been grown out a little bit longer, so some of those balls that would just shoot through the infield, you don't see that as often here in Colorado.
Like they used to do at Wrigley Field in Chicago.
Right.
That was unbelievable.
How deep and thick that grass was.
I mean, you know, kids could leave their toys out in the middle of the grass and you wouldn't know it. You know, the lawnmower goes
Yeah.
up. You know those kind of things I'm talking about. But, I mean, it was just unbelievable. Ryan Sandberg was noted for having a lot of range, but it was only because the ball was slowed up so much by the infield.
So 14 in the third innings. First run allowed. As that's chopped again off the plate. Terrio quickly to first, and he got him. And here is Chris Iannetta. Iannetta is hitting .218. 5 home runs, and he's driven in 15. The Rockies went through the Blake Street Bombers, and then they had the ill-advised signings of Mike Hampton, Denny Nagel. Now they've got the youth of Tulowitzki and Gonzalez. They've spent money, and they spent the most money of anybody this offseason in baseball. And I'm sure some fans are saying, why didn't they spend that kind of money on Matt Holliday to keep him here?
Well, spending money is one thing, but you want to spend money wisely. And if you are a club that needs a lot of help in a lot of places, you're more apt to spend a little less money on more players because you need more help.
Out to left center field, off the base of the wall. Nobody at second base, gets away, and Pujols is there. And it's 2-1 Colorado. Ball was hammered by Iannetta.
Iannetta's had some big hits against the Cardinals too over the years, and he just crushes this ball. And the unfortunate thing is you have the pitcher up next. You're not going to obviously pitch around Iannetta with Wigginton aboard, but you hate to see your 8th place guy hurt you. Jimenez is not a very good hitting pitcher.
Oh for 11 so far this year.
Didn't take very long for that ball to hit the center field wall, did it?
No, it didn't.
That was crushed.
Yes. So 2-1 Colorado as we play here in the second inning. Not a bad looking swing there by Jimenez.
It was pretty good. I guess I'm just going by results.
Numbers don't lie, do they?
You can look good and still be bad.
One ball and 2 strikes. Kelly Betlock is watching baseball tonight, enjoying it on Fox Sports Midwest back home in St. Louis. Wants to say hi to family and friends. 2 balls and 2 strikes on Ubaldo Jimenez. 3-2. Sun is peeking through the clouds again. And the 3-2 pitch to Jimenez on its way. And a strikeout for Jake Westbrook, his second of the night. Rockies lead it 2-1. Cardinals baseball on Fox Sports Midwest is brought to you by the Stadium Sports Bar and Grill at Lumiere Casino. It's now open, a sports bar for everyone. And by Steel. Are you ready for a steal? Lower downtown area that has been revitalized thanks to the Rockies and this ballpark. There's Ryan Theriot to lead it off 2-1 here in the third inning.
I'd like to see Theriot and John Jay make Jimenez work here in the third inning. Control has been an issue with him, but not so far tonight. Jimenez has walked way more batters per 9 innings than he did last year. He's still not a pinpoint control guy even when he's pitching well, but better to make him work.
And Theriot shoots that into the corner in right field. He's digging for 2, takes a look, thought about 3, and he'll stay put at second base.
Takes his pitch the other way, 1-1 count. A little bit more in the heart of the plate than I thought. Thought it was down and away, but just kind of had that right field swing.
Theriot now 1 for 2. He struck out to start the game. Here's John Jay, who doubled and scored on the base hit by Pujols back in the first. A fastball and a strike. Doug Eddings is calling the balls and strikes here tonight. Kerwin Danley is our crew chief. Vic Carapazza and Paul Newart also part of the umpiring crew for game 1 here in Colorado. Outfield is straight away and deep. The next to John Jay.
Jay again will be trying to hit the ball to the right side to move Theriot to third base with less than 2 outs. Shadows again a factor here. Sun keeps going in and out from behind the clouds, but Theriot's job to get to third, Jay's job to get him there.
The 1-1 pitch. Saw a gruesome injury. Buster Posey, the outstanding catcher of the San Francisco Giants, and for folks that did not see it, collision at the plate, tore up ligaments, fractured leg, and lost for at least a couple of months.
Just hate to see that.
You wonder how that changes the dynamics here in the National League West Division. As Jay retired, he's 1 for 2. And many around baseball think that the rules should be changed on a collision at the plate.
I'd like to see that. I mean, I'm not afraid of playing the game hard, but the catcher is such a vulnerable position. And with everything that we're learning about concussions, I mean, just forget the potential leg injuries and what Posey is dealing with. And again, changing the whole National League West perhaps for this season. But I'd like to see a little more protection for catchers and maybe outlaw those hard hitting plays at home. I know high school baseball has done that. And I believe college has as well.
Tim McCarver spoke to Tony La Russa about that. Tony on the rules committee for Major League Baseball. As Pujols pops it foul. And the idea was that there are going to be collisions at the plate, but anything that's above the shoulders, so the head area, take that out of the game. So if you're going to collide, you got to be lower. But still, that doesn't stop what could happen with the potential of a leg injury.
And in that replay, Posey was pretty low.
Yes.
And he really just got his leg caught underneath him, which was as much his fault in hindsight as it was the runner trying to score. Here's a chance, Dan, for Albert to get something going. Big hit his last time up. Get that good feeling going.
And he does. Rifles it into right center field. Base hit. Here comes Theriot. Throw will be cut off, and Albert Pujols with a pair of base hits and 2 RBIs tonight.
All the fans here in Denver are saying, what are you talking about? Albert's not swinging the bat well. You kidding me? We got our best guy. Not a good jump by Theriot as he waited to see that ball get down. But he has plenty of time to score. Outfielders have to play deep here in Colorado, but Albert just being Albert here. He's not really hit Colorado very well. Last year he did. 227 against the Rockies.
Now Lance Berkman, who skied one to short. Talk about a major league pop-up. That was it. Very nice crowd here at the ballpark. It's really starting to fill up. 6:40 first pitch local time. 5 o'clock tomorrow. We'll be back at it again Sunday afternoon with the Rockies. The 1-0 pitch to Berkman.
And a really sad thing happening here in Denver last week when a fan fell and died eventually from the injuries result of a 20-foot plus fall, and just goes to show you how important it is to be careful here, especially fans that want to enjoy a couple of adult beverages or two, that we just want to make sure folks have a safe, enjoyable time at the ballpark, and really sad to hear that news.
2 balls and a strike here on Berkman. Short lead at first by Pujols. Remember, he was running back in the first. I think we all would like to see the Cardinals be a little bit more aggressive on the base paths, hit and run, whether it be a straight steal, whatever the case may be, but try to generate more offense than just sitting back and waiting for these big guys to come up.
And it's a good count, 2-1. There's certain counts. George Kissel is a great teacher of Cardinal baseball. Most players that have worn the Cardinal uniform have learned 20 things from George Kissel. And he would walk up along the bench in the minor league games and say, "What's a good hit and run count?" And he'd point to you, and you better answer it right away. 2-1, 1-0, 2-0, 3-1.
Berkman, hot shot past second and into right field. And now Pujols on his way to third, and he's in there. You talk about some poor defense. That was it right there.
Yeah, Spielborg's just got his pocket picked by Albert Pujols, who he did not think he was going to be running, so the throw in did not have that in mind. Albert gets the jump, starts to kind of slow down at second, and then just decides, I'm going to take this base on Spielborgs, who's now flat-footed. A good throw with some momentum gets him. That's just the feel of the game that Albert possesses, and I like it. I like that move.
He is so good at doing what we just saw, where most players at this level will take for granted that the runner's going to stop at second base, or in some cases stop at third, not go home. And he is always trying to push the envelope a little bit. Now, if he gets caught, it's bad play, but he didn't.
Yeah, but you're safe with less than 2 outs at third base, and that's the goal. I mean, that's why that's important to take the extra base if you can.
Runners scored 4 out of 6 times in this spot for Allen Craig. Runners at first and third.
Outfield fly now. The Cardinals have the lead.
Popped fouling out of play.
Such a huge difference, Dan, between having a runner at second base and a runner at third. The pressure, even that a pitcher feels, because he knows the guy's just 90 feet away from scoring. Okay, I can't throw a ball in the dirt here, so I better be careful with my split. I don't want to overthrow it to Craig, so maybe I'll hang it.
On 0-2. Base hit into right field. That'll get down. Pujols scores, and Berkman stops at second base. So on 0-2, Allen Craig picks up the base hit RBI, his 15th of the year. And the Cardinals already with 7 hits tonight. 6 is a serious number again. When the Cardinals score 6, get 25-cent drinks the next day, all day. And on the run at Mobile, that's any 20-ounce coffee, fountain, or frozen drink for just $0.25. We're serious at On the Run at Mobile.
7 hits against Jimenez, but that has not been his problem this year. Batting average against him only .212, one of the best in the league, even though he's 0-4 with a high ERA. Just kind of hard to imagine. The walks have been high, but he's also just given up so many big hits, and he's given up a couple big hits already in this game, and Allen Craig possesses the last one to give the Cardinals a 3-2 lead here in the third.
And Rick, you wonder about his confidence right now. You know, this time last year, people were talking about him putting together a Cy Young type season.
He won 12 games for the Rockies in 08, 15 in 09, 19 last year, and you just had the sense that he had arrived as an elite pitcher in the National League.
Runners at first and second. Rasmus, pickoff play, and out. Berkman is out at second base.
Quick hands, quick feet of Jimenez. Tulowitzki sneaks in behind. And he is out. Very close play, but he is out.
Rasmus shoots it into right field. Craig on his way to third. And Colby is 2 for 2. Looked to be another hanging pitch. And now that pickoff play looms large.
Thinking the same thing. In a sense, that may have kept Jimenez from leaving this ball game. If not that he would do it right now, but if you've just got 1 out and now you've given up 5 out of 6 hits and it just seems to be steamrolling and it's 4-2, I mean, he'd be on the brink.
Well, they have a right-hander getting up and getting loose right now.
But he's only 1 out away now of just being down 1.
There's Yadier Molina. 2 outs, runners at the corners. Back to Jimenez. Makes the play. The Cardinals pick up 2, and they lead it 3-2 midway through 3. Three to 2 in favor of the Cardinals. Westbrook now pitching with another lead. Second time he's had a lead here tonight. It'll be the top of the lineup. Eric Young, Jonathan Herrera, and Carlos Gonzalez. His father, very popular player here in Colorado. Eric Young Sr. And Ely Jr. with a ground out first time up to short. With the speed he possesses, Scalzo is playing way in at third. Now he can back up.
You have to take that away.
The 0-2 pitch. Ground ball, base hit. Now this is the game within the game. Let's see if Colorado wants to push it against Yadier Molina with a guy like Eric Young Jr.
You talk about guys that run well being slap hitters. That's what that means. He just slapped at that ball, hit the ball on the ground. Something good's going to happen. A guy named Vince Coleman was pretty good at that.
Yes, he was. Switch inning, Jonathan Herrera. You're talking about Jimenez and his struggles here in this ball game. That hard to hit ball to Herrera easily could have been a double play if he gloves it. Played it off to the side, went into right field. Pujols advanced to third, changed the complexion of that inning.
That's what's great about baseball. If you look back over a game, there's always 8 to 10 things that happen that are almost. Ball almost caught, ball almost fair, pitch almost called a strike. And those 8 to 10 things affect the outcome of the game almost every night. Now you're going to have your 17-2 games, but not very often.
Let's see if Molina wants to try a pickoff here with a guy like Young, who's aggressive. There's the bunt. It's fun watching guys that can really run. They get it in gear and change a game with their legs. Take the Cardinals with you wherever you go this season. Subscribe to MLB.tv to see every Cardinals game live or on demand on your computer and your favorite devices. MLB.tv, baseball everywhere.
But you know how I feel, Dan, about bunting a fast runner over. Let him steal.
Right.
I think you've just given the Cardinals an out, for which they say thank you.
Carlos Gonzalez had a breakout season a year ago. The tails in. Gonzalez grounded back to Westbrook, who stopped it with his foot and made the play. What a difference a year makes with Gonzalez.
.336 last year. National League batting champion. You mentioned Dan signing a 7-year deal. So he knows he's going to be a Rocky.
Initially in 2002, he was signed by Arizona, acquired by the Oakland A's. It's part of the Dan Herron deal. And he picks up a base hit to left. Eric Young coming home. Throw is cut off by Descalso. And we're tied up at 3-3.
Another late jump by a base runner. This time it's Eric Young on the ball hit the other way. Doesn't get a great jump, but you know what? He doesn't really need one. John Jay comes up throwing really perfect form. Does the right thing, hits the cutoff man, and he can flat out fly. Runs like a young Dan McLaughlin.
Oh, yeah. How about this? You know, Gonzalez and Holiday traded for each other. Billy Beane has nothing to show for it. No Matt Holiday, no Gonzalez. Out to left, and it's a base hit as Jay tried to sell it. You could see it was a trap.
Yeah, it looked as if he short hopped it, but it's a good thing that he did. If he doesn't catch that ball and it goes past him, then you've got all kinds of trouble. He's shown that he has good hands on this play, Dan. We've seen it 2 or 3 times in the last couple of weeks from John Jay. Just a little short hop, does not catch it. You see it hit the grass first. But again, that could have been a lot worse.
Now Todd Helton. Be interesting to see how the Hall of Fame will vote with guys like Helton and other players that were part of the era before the humidor, and how those numbers are viewed. Talking with George Frazier before the game, who's former Cardinal pitcher and longtime analyst here in Colorado. He says if you break down Helton in his career, both home and road, so the numbers are pretty much identical. You know, he's been very good away from Coors Field. A fine play by Molina. There's George Frazier working with Drew Goodman.
Former Cardinal pitcher for a while in the minor leagues, George Frazier.
Big leagues.
And the big leagues?
Yeah. Good guy, funny guy too.
Probably played with Al, I would guess.
2-2.
That explains it, that he played with Al. Similar guys, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
George, a lot of fun. Does a great job.
Now, he grew up in the Oklahoma. Said he grew up a Cardinal fan. He said it was hard playing in St. Louis.
He didn't mind being a Minnesota Twin in '87, though, did he?
No, he didn't. That's a ball to Helton. So again, many don't know that Westbrook was an original draft pick by Colorado. Here's some of the names on that list that they've had. And we've had a couple of guys, as Dave Duncan is out to visit now with Westbrook, former Rockies, that have hurt the Cardinals, whether it be Brad Hopp, saw him in San Diego with a home run that put them ahead, and also Jeff Francis, the pitcher now at Kansas City.
Now the Rockies are hurting the Cardinals all by themselves as they've gotten back in this game. 2 runs in the second, 1 run in the third, and we've got ourselves a classic Coors Field game going on here, don't we? A lot of offense, a lot of excitement, and unfortunately Jake Westbrook does not have his pinpoint stuff as of yet. A couple of walks for him, and he's got a couple of balls elevated.
Ty Wigington in his career 4 for 13 coming into play against Jake Westbrook. Those two have seen each other in the American League. So the bases are full of Rockies. Only one out. A tie ball game 3-3. The 1-0 pitch. Foul. You would think that with this ballpark, Westbrook would have been the perfect type of pitcher, sinker baller, ground balls to pitch at Coors Field.
Ground balls are important, and he gets them as much as anybody else does. Rockies playing here a lot, know how to get the ball elevated. You know, it's interesting, even for a sinker ball pitcher or somebody who's a off-speed pitcher, you will hear complaints in a place like Colorado where they'll say that the ball doesn't break as much. Curveball doesn't, it spins a little, the sinker's a little less sharp. So the light air has other effects other than just having the ball travel a long way. It can actually affect how the pitcher throws particular pitches. The sinker we're talking about is meant to induce a ground ball. What do you do with a pitch that's about shin high? You pound it in your own shin, I guess. Not much else you can do with it when it's down there.
It's a strikeout. Big one there for Jake Westbrook. Picks up his third of the night, and it's up to Spilborghs.
Perfect location. Again, going down and in, and he just can't keep the bat head back. Definitely goes through the zone.
Pitch taken low and outside. Spilborghs grounded out to short his first time up. The 1-0 pitch. There's your ground ball to Terrio. Force play at second. And Westbrook avoids big trouble. 3-3 after 3 here at Coors Field. Jimenez back to work, and it's a strike to Descalso. Daniel came up first time with a runner at third base and grounded sharply to Todd Helton, who threw home to get the runner and prevent a run from scoring. Hits it sharply again. The second baseman this time puts it away. That's Herrera. If you have a car and love baseball, then don't miss discounted Cardinals tickets from Phillips 66 Gas when you fill up with 10 gallons or more. For complete details, stop by your local station or visit cardinals.com/Phillips66. Watching the second baseman Herrera, he didn't look comfortable even on that line drive.
Ball was hit pretty hard. I thought it might have been a knuckler, but he made some play going up the middle against Yadier Molina early on, and had he not made that play, the Cardinals might have had a bigger inning. So defense has already been a factor here. The Berkman hit up the middle you mentioned he might have been able to catch, turn into a double play, and he didn't. That led to a Cardinal run.
Strike to Westbrook, and it's 2-2. Jim Tracy now in his third year as the manager of the Colorado Rockies. You won't find a nicer man in the game of baseball than Jim Tracy. Pitching coach Bob Apodaca. Saw him a number of years with the Mets.
First autograph I ever got as a kid was Bob Apodaca.
First win in the big leagues, if you didn't know, was against the Cardinal Hall of Famer Bob Gibson.
Think he sent the ball over afterwards to have the sign?
Yeah. Could you imagine?
I would suggest that that would not be a good idea.
No. Strauss was telling us that he got a hit off of Bob Gibson.
And we know Bob is watching and not happy right now, just thinking about it.
Their hitting coach with a little bit of a Cardinal tie-in, Carding Lansford. Was with the Redbirds briefly for Tony La Russa. Westbrook pops it up. Foul territory, and it's out of play. Now, Carney also coached Daniel Descalso in high school. His sons played with Daniel, and Daniel grew up idolizing the Oakland A's, and sure enough, Carney Lansford becomes his head coach.
Pretty good at bat here for Westbrook. Just trying to get a bat on the ball. There's a lot of folks, Dan, mostly American League fans, I would say this, that maybe their least favorite thing in all of sports is to watch a pitcher hit. I just find it kind of fun.
And Westbrook draws a walk. And some boos here at Coors Field. June 3rd, bring the entire family to Busch Stadium for Merrimack Caverns Night. All kids 15 and under receive a coupon good for one admission for a Merrimack Caverns cave tour and boat ride. Ricky, it may be hot outside, but
it's always a cool 60 degrees inside the cave.
Making sure you've been paying attention. Here's Ryan Theriot reaching for it and hits it out of play.
Hanging on your every word, Dan.
Ubaldo Jimenez tossed the first no-hitter in Rockies history at Atlanta. Also last year finished with the lowest ERA in franchise history. Hit sharply towards second and a double play. 4-6-3 on the double play. A 3-3 ball game in the bottom of the fourth here at Coors Field in Denver. Chris Iannetta will lead it off against Jake Westbrook, who pitched out of a jam last inning. Bases loaded, only one out, and no damage done.
Had a couple of interesting situations already in this game, and before it's over, somebody's going to get the big hit. Who's it going to be? I know who your vote is. Our third baseman.
7th inning or later. He's the guy.
Too early for him right now. Although he did hit a ball right on the nose his first at bat. Colby Rasmus ended up getting thrown out at the plate by Todd Helton. Again, game of inches.
Iannetta with that RBI double, his first time up against Westbrook. Was allowed 5 base hits. The Cardinals have out hit the Rockies 8-5 so far. And we're tied up at 3-3 here in the bottom of the fourth.
He loves to work quickly, Jake Westbrook. Get the ball, get the sign, go.
I would think his defense loves that too.
They do. Also think it just helps him be able to make adjustments from pitch to pitch. The quicker you work, the more you can just make an adjustment off that last pitch. Walk around the mound, take your time, then you're starting all over again. I always liked Whitey Herzog saying, hey, if you're going to be bad, do it quickly. He didn't say bad, but that's close enough for TV.
And a little ground ball to the left side. Descalso fires a strike to Pujols.
I love the arm of Daniel Descalso too. We've talked about that a couple of times. He just throws clotheslines across the way. We saw Scott Rowland for years with a strong arm, and you know how important it is to have a strong arm at that position. You know, I guess an arm is important at most positions in the game, but maybe not the first baseman so much. Catcher needs to have a strong arm. You'd like one in one of your outfield positions or more, but third base, you better have a strong arm.
Jimenez falls behind 0-2. And a swing and a miss. He strikes out. I like the other swings.
Didn't look so good.
No, he did not. Todd Stoudemire, 8 1/3, allowing a solo home run to Todd Helton in the 9th. Cardinals top Darryl Kyle and the Rockies 2-1. Our Schnooks this date in history, 1998. And we were just talking a couple of hours ago,
yeah,
Ricky and I, about Darryl Kyle and pitching here at Coors Field, and then a roll foul, and really getting his career back on track when he got traded to St. Louis.
Yeah, things were going so well for him. It was such a tragedy. We see the number 57, and he was one of those teammates that everybody respected and admired, and kind of a glue guy and the team leader in a kind of a fun kind of way, and just such a sad time in Cardinal history, and of course Rocky history as well. So many of his former teammates were so distraught over that news of his passing, as well as teammates that he'd had in the minor leagues over the years in Houston. And the service that was done at Busch Stadium included a lot of former Astros teammates were there. Biggio, Bagwell. Just a really, really hard time.
Doesn't get the call, and it's 1-2. Eric Young is 1 for 2 on the night.
Also around the passing of Jack Buck.
Right. Darryl Kyle award winner this past year for the Cardinals, Matt Holliday. And Holliday is available to pinch hit in this series, but we may not see him at all in the everyday lineup.
We were surprised to hear that news yesterday. But, you know, Tony has come to be very patient, because I think he's gotten burned over the years with getting the guy back too soon, and then realize you're going to get him back for a game, then he re-injures himself, and you're going to miss him for another 2 weeks. It's not worth it. It's not that he's not a gamer and he's not going to try to play, talking about Matt Holliday, but as long as you've got John Jay playing left field like he's playing, Alan Craig is contributing, Descalzo's contributing. I mean, all those pieces add up to a pretty good Cardinal offense over the last couple of weeks, so you shouldn't have that same kind of pressure to just rush him back.
Yeah, he was saying that Kansas City, really it was a situation where he felt he could have, you know, had a situation where he injured himself to the point where he's going to miss weeks instead of days. Westbrook makes the play, and he enjoys a 1-2-3 inning. Well, look at the aces of both these teams, and a little bit off kilter right now. You think about Carpenter and that 1-5 record. The ERA is close to 5. Jimenez winless so far this year. We'll see Carpenter pitch next time out when we get back home against San Francisco. Floats in there for a strike from Ubaldo Jimenez. Just joining us earlier in the game, they had the bullpen up and throwing. He was close to being lifted. Cardinals have knocked out 8 base hits so far.
And again, the difference from one year to the next, Dan. Last year, when Jimenez was starting, the bullpen guys that go out there, they might tie their shoes, they might not. They're just going to hang out for 8 innings because they know he's going to be out there for the long haul.
Bob Apodaca is the pitching coach of the Rockies, and we asked him about both his guy and Chris Carpenter and their slow starts.
Slowly but surely, the cream will always come to the top. You will see Chris Carpenter be Chris Carpenter again. because not just what they possess, but what you can't see that they possess. And I think the cream will come to the top with both these pitchers.
I love what he's talking about what you can't see that they possess. And that's kind of the determination, that's the guts, that's the fire of a pitcher at the level of Chris Carpenter.
Pujols now 2 for 3 with a pair of RBIs. He grounds out sharply to second. And quickly 2 outs, and it brings in Lance Berkman. Berkman 1 for 2. Popped out to short and also single. The Rockies have made it to 1 World Series. The improbable run of 2007, 21 wins in the final 22 games.
Well, we've praised Lance Berkman quite a bit this year, and he's deserved every word that we've said about him, but his pickoff at second base was a big mistake in this game. Colby Rasmus followed the pickoff with a base hit to right field. Jimenez was on the ropes in the Cardinal third.
And I bring that up about the run in 2007 because it was about this time when the Rockies started getting hot. They finished up 72 and 46 from May 22nd on. They had 1 road trip in which they had 1 win out of 10. They were in last place, and then they just went on a tear. Taking a little bit low, 3-1.
Say the Rockies a little bit like the Houston Astros in that regard. Teams that all of a sudden are just good. They're not good, and then they're good, and you wonder how does that happen?
And a lot of baseball people, Rick, as you well know, will say this weekend, this is the time when you kind of know what your team is going to look like from here on out. You are what you are after the first 2 months.
I think that's true until you get to the trading deadline.
Yes.
And then you are what you are plus what you can afford.
And Berkman caught looking on a pitch on the outside corner. Visit your local Lowe's to cast your Major League Baseball All-Star ballot and enter to win a trip to the All-Star game in Arizona. It's compliments of Scott's. Here's Herrera. First pitch, a strike by Westbrook here in the bottom of the 5th.
Both starters seem to have settled a bit.
And a race to the bag. Westbrook is there. The flip by Pujols for the out. You can get online Monday afternoon and follow the game through Game Connect on FoxSportsMidwest.com. Presented by Jack in the Box. It's a true second screen experience where you can follow stat trends for players, interact with Twitter, and find it Monday, FoxSportsMidwest.com. Presented by Jack in the Box. There's Gonzalez. You're talking about both these starters getting settled in. The Cardinals let Jimenez off the hook.
Absolutely.
Two balls and no strikes.
And in some ways, the Rockies did the same thing with Jake Westbrook. They had bases loaded with 1 out in the 3rd inning. And a key at bat was Ty Wigginton striking out with the bases loaded. He has to put that ball in play. He doesn't. Westbrook has had a new life since then.
That's it out of play. 2 balls, 1 strike.
A little unusual. Fastball up in the zone. A lot of lefties like the ball down. Occasionally you have to change the eye level.
The 2-2.
Go back low with the changeup. Those tricky pitchers.
ground ball to Poole. Stays down on it. Westbrook to the bag. Six Flags Day at Busch Stadium on Memorial Day, Monday, May 30th. The Cardinals on Monday will play the reigning world champs, the San Francisco Giants. And 48 inches and under, you're a kid, you get a free ticket to Six Flags. Visit us online at cardinals.com for more. And again, a reminder, $9 terrace seats available for the series against San Francisco. Also, bleacher seats, $18, part of dynamic pricing. Pretty good deal.
We mentioned a couple of pitches that Westbrook got elevated, Dan, including the Iannetta hit off the left center field wall that was hit a ton, but we are 2 outs in the bottom of the 5th inning, and we've yet to have an out recorded in the air. Every out's been a strikeout or on the ground to an infield. That's Jake Westbrook. That's his typical style. And he's making enough good pitches to keep his club in this game.
Would it shock you if I told you Troy Tulowitzki was not drafted out of high school?
Yes.
3 years later, he becomes one of the best players in the country. And he's a high draft choice of the Rockies. He said that's something that has motivated him his entire college and pro career now, not being drafted out of high school. Tulowitzki grounds out. Westbrook an easy 1-2-3 inning. Alan Craig leads it off when we come back. Cardinals baseball on Fox Sports Midwest is brought to you by Jack in the Box. Right now you can get the new bourbon barbecue steak grilled sandwich at participating restaurants. And by Kia. Gorgeous night for baseball here in Denver. Jimenez pitching now into the 6th inning. Alan Craig, Colby Rasmus, and Yadier Molina. Rockies certainly, and we've told you about the stats, have not hit this year. Now they're dealing with injuries to their starting rotation as Craig hits it past Tulowitzki and into left field for a base hit. And tomorrow we'll see a young fireballer, 24-year-old Juan Nicasio. Last year was at high A ball Modesto, and now he's in the big leagues.
What a jump. I mean, talking about a 23-year-old Dominican right-hander pitching an A ball. Now he's a big leaguer trying to fill the shoes of Jorge De La Rosa. The swing of Alan Craig. And the Cardinals will pinch run for him with Tyler Green. A bit of a defensive move here, but you also get the speed of Tyler Green. 6th inning, tie game. I'm totally tracking this one.
Well, and here's what you're talking about before. You could bunt the situation. You wouldn't probably do that with Rasmus, you wouldn't think, and let Green come in and try to steal the bag.
Why not? And slowly but surely, Alan Craig is starting to pick up his numbers. Batting over 300.
Rasmus is 2 for 2 with a steal tonight. The check on Green. Cardinals jumped out to a 1-0 lead in the first. Rockies took the lead 2-1 in the second. Cardinals picked up 2 in the third. And then the Rockies tied it right back up. That's where we're at right now, 3-3. Cardinals about hit Colorado 9-5.
One thing speed does for you is it elevates the stress level of everybody on the infield right now. They know on a deep play to short, Tulowitzki's going to have to be quicker to get the ball to second on the fielder's choice. Got to watch for the stolen base. The catcher's amped up a little bit.
Rasmus shoots it out to deep left center field. Young on the move. He won't get it. Here comes Tyler Green. They'll wave him in. Rasmus on his way to third. Throw into there. He is safe. Colby Rasmus RBI triple to make it 4-3. Looked like, Rick, that Young had some issues getting that baseball back in. I'm not sure if it was trapped under the wall, but regardless, This is our Nissan drive of the game.
A lot of triples in this ballpark because there's a lot of room. Colby Rasmus drives this to deep left center field. And a very close play at third. I thought he might have been out, but he is safe at third. Big triple for Colby Rasmus. He's now 3 for 3.
You wonder if that'll get the Rockies bullpen active again. Here's Yadier Molina. The time called. Molina is 0 for 2. He was robbed his first time up by Herrera, the second baseman, and then also hit a hot shot back to the pitcher.
Jake Westbrook already has 93 pitches. The Cardinals have some bullpen action too. It's a lot of innings to expect out of your bullpen. But if Westbrook comes up in this inning with a chance to add on, I think Tony will pinch hit for him. And if not, I think he'll send him back out for one more inning. Miguel Batista is the long man.
Mitchell Boggs made a start the other day at AAA Memphis, ending in a third. Ground ball to short, slowly hit to Lewitzki. Only play to go to first, and Molina drives in the run. Yadi with RBI number 22, and it's 5 to 3.
Well, that's Yadi understanding the defense. They're playing back in the middle infield. Just put the ball in play anywhere, and it's a good result. Yadi does not strike out very often. Always up among the league leaders in that category. And he picks up an RBI, number 22.
Strike to Daniel Descalso. 1 out, nobody on. 2 runs have scored. It's 5-3 in favor of the Redbirds. This, to me, Rick, is not the Jimenez that I remember from seeing a year ago.
No, it's not. He does not have the sharpness to his pitches, doesn't have the velocity in the high 90s. I mean, he's mid to low 90s. That's not bad, but it's not the 19 and 8 pitcher that we saw last year with an ERA under 3.
That's Matt Daly getting loose in the bullpen for Colorado. And it's Jimenez throwing hard, but also consistently throwing hard. It was amazing. And that's pulled down the right field line, and a fair ball. Descalso on his way to second base, and he'll stop there. And as you predicted here, Ricky, it looks like they're going to pull back Jake Westbrook. That'll be it for him.
Well, you have a chance to add on. 2-run lead in Colorado does not seem like a very big lead. Just golfs this ball down the right field line. Descalso, his first hit of the night. How about this guy?
So Matt Holliday will be the pinch hitter.
I would wonder if they might walk Matt Holliday, and then we might have a pinch runner for Matt Holliday. And he's really just window dressing here, daring the Rockies to pitch to him. He hit a ball up on the concourse today during batting practice. We know he can swing. He's just not 100% ready to run yet. If you hit it far enough, you don't have to run.
Mixed reception at best for Holliday. And now they want to talk things over. This is Iannetta out to visit.
Well, it could be that they want Daly to come in and pitch to Holliday. Again, talking about whether or not they should walk him or not. I think that's on the table as well.
AT&T trivia question: who has the highest average among Cardinals all time against the Rockies? John Mabry also hit for the cycle against Colorado.
The natural cycle. Single, then a double, then a triple, then a home run.
They're going to intentionally walk Holiday here. You would think that you would have to pinch run for Holiday at this point.
I'm sure that's the plan. We'll see. I'm guessing not Kyle Loesch. It could be Kyle Loesch, but I'm going to say Jaime Garcia. No, I would say Kyle Loesch because there he is. Garcia is pitching tomorrow, Loesch on Sunday. And Matt will just kind of jog down to first and call it a night.
Pretty good way to make a living. Now, even watching him jog, you can see, Rick, he's not quite right.
No,
he's not with that leg. Uncomfortable and still hurt. So Holiday gets the intentional pass. And here's Ryan Theriot with one out. The Cardinals 11 base hits tonight.
Against Ubaldo Jimenez.
Theriot with one of those base hits. A double, run scored tonight. Also bounced into a 4-6-3 double play. Get a chance to see the arm of Troy Tulowitzki. He has a cannon out there at shortstop.
Sure does. Just not a lot of life on the pitches of Jimenez. That one at 91, almost kind of a sloppy looking pitch from him. Didn't really have, I don't think, the intended movement. Just kind of faded in on Theriot, and we've just seen a lot of pitches like that from Jimenez. He's not the same guy we saw last year. Not yet, anyway.
1-0 pitch in the dirt. Well, you think about what Tony La Russa has done in this ball game. Two good offensive players out now with Craig and Holiday. And you put the rest of the game in your hopes with the bullpen.
And you're talking about 12 outs out of the bullpen. Still a little staggered by what you said earlier, the kind of the lukewarm at best reception from Matt Holiday.
Little bloop into right field. That'll drop for a base hit. He'll test the right fielder. The throw to the plate and safe. No, they're going to say he got him. The throw from Spilborghs to the plate, and Descalso tagged on the shoulder.
Mild argument from Descalso. We'll get another look at this play at the plate. A very strong arm by Spilborg. And does he tag him? I don't know. The plate umpire says yes. Does he tag him or not? There's the tag attempt. Oh boy. He might have got him with the lacing of his glove, which I guess counts.
Here is John Jay.
Still a great slide by Descalso, though, getting the back corner of that plate, trying to avoid the tag.
Very surprised to see Oquendo send him. Now we know he's aggressive, but you've got Jay coming up and then Pujols.
Descalso runs well enough, though, Dan. I think it's worth the effort there. That is a strong arm. We know Spilborghs has a strong arm in right. I don't think the jump was very good by Descalso, which of course Oquendo knows by the time he gets to third, so he can still change his mind and hold him up.
0-2 scoots away. Another play at the plate. Rasmus is safe. Or excuse me, Loesch is safe. Make sure he doesn't get hurt. So Kyle Loesch came in as a pinch runner, scores that run to make it a 6-3 ball game.
And he gets a good jump. Acts like he knows what he's doing. Perfect slide into the plate. And
Just don't get hurt.
The pitcher's there.
Hey, that is, though, in all seriousness, the risk that you run.
No question.
In using a pitcher in that spot.
And it's why you use your most athletic pitcher that you feel most comfortable with. There's two choices. You use the athlete that won't get himself hurt, or you use the guy that's not a very good pitcher. And if he gets hurt, you're okay with it. Now, in this case, Loesch has been an outstanding pitcher. I once went to play right field. Whitey said, "You're going to right, not Todd Burrell, because I don't want him to get hurt." What did that tell me?
Strikeout of John Jay. Big inning for the Cardinals. Six is a serious number again. Cardinals score 6 like tonight. 25-cent drinks the next day, all day, and on the run at Mobile. Cool evening here in Denver. 6-3 in favor of St. Louis. Miguel Batista, our Chevy, called to the bullpen.
Kind of been the jack of all trades out of the Cardinal bullpen. He's a guy that's been used late, used early, used long, used short. ERA is good, 2.45. A few too many walks for Batista. He's going to try to throw that low fastball.
And here is Todd Helton.
And he throws a high fastball.
To the backstop.
Closing the book on Jake Westbrook, not one out in the air.
So important at this ballpark.
Oh. And you'd think that would be a kind of thing that is a strength of Miguel Batista as well. He's got the low sinker. Seems to be a bit wild high right now. He's going to have to get that ball down.
There's a fly ball into left center field. Rasmus under it to make the catch.
Defense will matter over the next 4 innings. Tyler Green taking over at second base. And you better catch the ball in Colorado. 4 outs in an inning can't happen.
Here's Ty Wigington. RBI base hit, also a strikeout, another fly ball. Rasmus under it, 2 away. So quickly 2 outs. And it brings in Ryan Spilborghs. Spilborghs is grounded into a fielder's choice, also grounded out to short. And that pitch is in there for a strike. One of the things the Cardinals could have thought about with Matt Holliday is putting him on the disabled list, but now with him in this game tonight, clearly that will not be the case.
Could be an indicator that he's closer than he was 2 days ago, and the news was a little less optimistic about him playing even as early as Monday.
Two balls and 1 strike. What's been your impression of watching Batista now after a couple of months?
Pretty live arm for a 40-year-old.
Amazing, isn't it?
I don't know too many 40-year-olds that can throw the ball low 90s. Good movement. Seems like he's really kept himself in shape. Really doesn't look any different than he did when he was a young pitcher in the big league. Stuff's good.
Good movement on that pitch. Little bloop into shallow right. And the catch made by Green. Bouncing into Berkman. And both are okay as they trot off the diamond. The catch made by Tyler Green. 6-3 as we head to the 7th. This copyrighted telecast is presented by the authority of the Cardinals and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form. And the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without the express written consent of the St. Louis Cardinals. Albert Pujols will lead it off for the Redbirds. Good night. Couple of base hits, pair of RBIs, hit totals up to 28.
Yeah, run scored as well, and looks very comfortable at the plate. Aggressive on the base paths.
Chevy called to the bullpen.
Right-hander Matt Daly, first assignment will be Albert Pujols, middle of the lineup, and look at his numbers. The suggestion for the Cardinals playing in Denver, don't stop scoring runs. Way too much game to be played.
Pujols, the RBI base hit, a single in the first. Also a RBI single in the third, and grounded out to second sharply. Taken low, 2 balls, 1 strike.
Decent outing for Jake Westbrook. He's in line to win his 3rd straight game. He really started, Dan, the string of good starting pitching with his outing at home against the Phillies. They've been sharp ever since as a staff.
The 2-1 pitch to Albert. 2-2. Out of play. Matt Daly, no record, 2.25 ERA. And right-handers are just 2 for 11 against him.
Albert looked like he was looking for a slider on that pitch. He was way late on the fastball. It looked like he just adjusted and fouled off a fastball right before it got by him.
Takes it to right again.
And you know Daly doesn't throw so hard that Albert can't get around on him. That's not the issue, but he is keeping his hands back. Maybe that's a good thing. Working on staying back, letting the ball get deeper in the zone. We saw his first hit today go the other way.
The 2-2. Pujols, a strikeout. So good start here for Daly. If you go back to even the end of last year, Daly has given up just 2 base hits, 19 at bats against the righties. Made 17 appearances for AAA Colorado Springs before he was recalled on May 20th. In those 17 games down in the minor leagues, did not pitch well. His record was 0-2 with an ERA close to 7.
Having pitched in Colorado Springs, 7 isn't too bad.
Right. Good point.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a normal sized ballpark, but the ball shoots out of there even more than it does in Denver. I pitched in Denver as well when I was with the Brewers. And it's just, I mean, if you're going to be a fly ball pitcher, you're going to rely on some breaks and some outfield defense, you're pitching in the wrong spot.
Before the humidor, they talked about for a pitcher how hard it was even gripping and getting a feel for a breaking ball. Very slick baseballs.
Right.
The seams tighten up. It's a hard baseball.
But you've got good scenery, though, which is nice.
Three and 0. And it's a walk to Berkman. But Tyler Green was lucky that he wasn't hurt on that play with Berkman in shallow right.
Agreed. Tyler Green's also lucky he didn't hurt Lance Berkman.
Would that be a automatic benching?
That might, I don't know, just wouldn't have been a good thing. You'd have had some Tyler Green haters out there, even if he did catch the ball.
This time he bunts it in the air. It drops in. That'll be a base hit. So base hit for Green. With one out, it's runners at first and second.
Not sure that's how he designed that bunt, but it was effective. Like he used a nice little 56 degree there.
And here is Colby Rasmus, another guy that tonight has looked very comfortable at the plate. 3 for 3, stolen base, pair of singles, and an RBI triple back in the 6th inning. Colby again. He is 4 for 4. Down into the corner it goes. One run is in. Here comes Green. They'll wave him in. And Rasmus will have his second triple of the night. 4 for 4. We're talking about guys that can really run. EY Jr. How about this guy when he gets it going?
I think this is his best speed when he goes from first to third. We used to say that about Willie McGee. I'm not saying Colby Rasmus is Willie McGee, but the ball just rattling around in the corner just for a minute allows Rasmus a triple instead of a double. He now has 5 triples on the season.
Here's Molina. The infield is drawn in. And Yachty has a RBI tonight. Ground out to short. It's his 3rd career 4-hit game. Colby came in hitting .273. Oh, 1 pitch to Yachty. 1 ball, 1 strike. The 1-1 pitch. Scalzo on deck. Out of play, 2 strikes.
Last time Rasmus was at third base with Molina at the plate, all Yachty needed to do is hit a little ground ball to score. Different situation here. The Rockies with the infield in. Now Molina has to elevate the ball into the outfield to score Rasmus from third. Slightly different situational hitting for Rasmus and Molina.
Young will make the catch. Rasmus coming in, and he will score easily to make it 9-3. So a pair of RBIs tonight for Yadier Molina.
One of those nights that Yachty has not gotten a base hit, as you mentioned, but he's had a very good offensive night. Done his job twice. Actually did it 3 times because he moved Rasmus over in the second inning. From second to third by hitting the ball to the right side.
So 2 outs, nobody on for Descalso. A breaking ball and a strike. So back-to-back innings where the Cardinals score 3 runs. A 1 pitch to Daniel. Get out of play. Best of friends right there, Pujols and Molina. Was talking with Albert before the game about Yadi. He said the best part about Yadi is that you never know if he went 4 for 4 or 0 for 4. He said he truly cares about one thing, the team winning.
You know, you've seen him develop. We've seen him develop as a man, Yadier Molina. When he came up, he was a kid, and he would listen and do anything that Mike Matheny and Albert Pujols told him to do. And now he's a man in his own right, still respecting both of those guys, as well as the rest of his teammates. But he is a top player, top catcher in baseball.
Time to stretch. Redbirds on top, 9-3.
One of 2011's best values is the Grand Slam ticket pack. Monday through Thursday games, you can get 4 tickets, 4 hot dogs, and 4 sodas for just $60. Tickets are available today at Cardinals.com.
Well, tomorrow it'll be Jaime Garcia looking to go to 6-0. Our Budweiser What's on Tap. You can see that game locally in St. Louis on Fox Channel 2. Our Budweiser What's on Tap, and Garcia looking to go to 6-0.
I mention a lot Loesch and McClellan in terms of what they've done to make up for the loss of Adam Wainwright, but the assumption is that Jaime Garcia was expected to do what he's doing, and I'm not sure that's the right assumption for me to make. You know, he had such a great year last year, Dan, but that's hard to repeat, and he has been phenomenal. Dave Duncan's done a great job getting him comfortable with who he is as a pitcher, and Garcia has really blossomed, and every time he pitches I look forward to it.
Well, in St. Lucie, when he was taking on the Mets at the end of spring training, he was roughed up, and you had to sit there and watch that game, and you're thinking, this is not the same guy that we saw a year ago. And then he comes out his first start, and he's ridiculous. He was great.
It was hard to watch that start, frankly. And I believe he gave up 14 hits in 4 innings, something like that. And after that, you'd think, okay, he saw his curveball, it was flat, his sinker wasn't sinking, and there's something wrong with it. Evidently not.
So 9-3. Batista, his second inning of work, and there's a look at Jaime Garcia.
And we'll see Garcia tomorrow, then Loesch on Sunday.
Broken bat off the end of the bat. Rasmus makes the catch on the run. One away, and so far so good for Batista.
Like his control was off when he first came into this game, but he's really settled down. Has had 3 fly balls to Rasmus and a little pop up in the infield handled by Tyler Green going back. So great thing in baseball, he's got them popping up.
Dexter Fowler will be the pinch hitter as you get a look at the broken bat. Rick, you talked about this earlier. Fowler's a guy that they were relying on to really get things going, to be a table setter in their lineup, but yet you look at the amount of strikeouts, it's alarming for a leadoff man to have that many.
I just wouldn't think that that'd be part of his game. You think he'd be the slap hitter? We talked about Eric Young with his slap hit early on. Don't really need home runs out of him. You just need him to put the ball in play. Speed will take care of the rest of it.
"56 strikeouts for Fowler this year.
Fourth in the National League in that total. The other names up there, you think, okay, Ryan Howard, he's going to be up there. Although Drew Stubbs is number one.
That is a bit surprising,
also
too.
a leadoff hitter for Cincinnati. And we see what Cincinnati's done the last week or so. Mayday, Mayday.
9th inning right now. Cincinnati leading Atlanta by the score of 3-1.
Milwaukee's become the hot team in the National League Central. They've won 6 straight.
Trailing in the 8th to San Francisco tonight, 5-3. Cardinals hold on. They would go to 3.5 games up if Milwaukee loses. Another strikeout of Fowler, and Batista picks up the second out.
Good sinking fastball from Batista. Throwing pretty hard for a 40-year-old.
Well, we know he's watching tonight. Our buddy Big Dog Dave Anderson back home in St. Louis. We just want to give him a shout out. See him on Monday.
He's the best.
Eric Young recalled today. Singled and scored, and looks at his strike. He looks like his dad too, doesn't he?
He sure does.
The 1-1 pitch. So if this is your long man, Batista, you're up by 6 runs. He's due up first. Try to stretch him out for one more inning.
I think I would.
You never know in this ballpark what you're going to be facing tomorrow or on Sunday, how many pitchers you may need as Young strikes out. We'll find out when we come back. Batista due to lead things off. Bruce Billings, 25-year-old out of San Diego, California. Added to the 40-man roster this past offseason. Originally drafted by Colorado, 30th round, 07, out of San Diego State University. And he had spent the entire year at AAA Colorado Springs. He's been called up because of the injury to Jorge De La Rosa. It's our Chevy called to the pen.
And our first look at him, obviously, and you know the butterflies are there for him in his major league debut. Perfect kind of game to bring him in, 9-3. He will not be facing Miguel Batista. Skip Schumacher has a bat in his hand, and we will see another Cardinal reliever in the 8th inning. But a great job by Batista. And Billings will remember the rest of his life that Skip Schumacher was the first batter I ever faced in a big league uniform.
Who did you face first time?
My first batter was Jeff Leonard. And
One flap down, huh?
And he hit a home run.
Did he really?
On the first pitch. Why is that funny?
Yeah, it just suits you.
I would have expected a little bit more sympathy or empathy.
No.
That's not right.
Never.
He got better. The second batter only had a double on the first pitch. Chili Davis.
San Francisco Giants, huh? Did you see a third batter?
I did. I actually pitched 3 innings in that game. I finally got out Joe Youngblood. I challenged him on 6 straight changeups. Grounded out the second. Inning was over, and I settled down after that.
Schumacher shoots one foul. And out of play. 2 balls and 1 strike. So he's pinch hitting here for Bautista.
But you do remember the moment, Dan. I mean, everything about it.
Oh, I
mean,
can only
it's
imagine.
just unbelievable. I remember coming in off the field and Bruce Sutter and Bob Forrest greeting me and saying, "Hey, that's okay, kid. At least you're throwing strikes." They were mocking me, which I didn't know at the time. But I'll never forget that. I mean, it was just almost a surreal moment. It's a dream come true, literally, for this pitcher.
Two and two. Schumacher was saying before the game, still trying to get that timing back. Missed time and then not much of a assignment to try to get his timing back. So he's been brought right back to the big leagues.
They didn't want to rush him, but if Nick Punto hadn't have gotten hurt, I think he would have been able to have a few more days to get ready.
This is slicing and dropping in for a base hit for Schumacher. Leadoff base hit. And we're back to the top of the lineup in Ryan Theriot. Theriot doubled and scored in the 3rd. He has singled. That was back in the 6th inning. Also grounded into a double play and struck out.
Redbirds were hitting .281 coming into this game, and they certainly haven't hurt that batting average. Leading the National League, 15 hits already tonight. And they may not be done.
And a double play ball, low throw, nice pick by Tulowitzki. No, they're going to say he's safe at second, never was on the bag.
Well, there won't be an error on this play, but it's a missed opportunity for the pitcher in his major league debut because he throws a low ball to second. They say Tulowitzki does not touch second. Look at that one more time. Does he touch the bag or not with his left foot? No, he doesn't.
Good call. The other runner in scoring position for the Redbirds, that's Schumacher. And here is John Jay. Pujols on deck. There's a base hit out to left. They'll hold up the runners. Gonzalez has a very strong arm. And an RBI opportunity for Pujols. Second hit for John Jay. The Cardinals now with 15 base hits.
Well, you've got a young pitcher out there, obviously upset with himself that he wasn't able to get the double play turned. But he better get over it quickly because now he's got to pitch to Albert Pujols in his major league debut.
Remember Evan McLean? Remember that name?
I do.
Well, the first batter that he saw, I believe it was here. Walk-off home run. Welcome to the big leagues. And he did pitch one other inning. I believe he was hurt, and we haven't heard from him since.
Josh Kinney gave up a home run on the first pitch he threw in the big leagues as a Cardinal. The last Cardinal to do it since yours truly. Happen to know about that record.
How is Josh doing? Have you talked to him?
I believe he is with, I have not talked to him. I believe he's with the White Sox. I know he's in the minor leagues hoping to come back. And a lot of folks said he had a pretty good year last year in AAA and should have had a look again.
The 2-0 pitch. Pujols bounces it to short. Out at second. Out at first. It's a double play. 6-4-3. Cardinals baseball is brought to you by Bud Light Lime, the just right taste of Bud Light. with a refreshing splash of 100% natural lime flavor. By Bank of America, where ATM deposits are as easy as an infield fly. No deposit slip, no envelope. With Bank of America, member FDIC. And by AT&T. Cardinals 16 base hits. Colorado with just 5. And the Redbirds with a big lead here in the bottom of the 8th. Brian Talent, your new pitcher after 2 fine innings from Batista.
Unfortunate the Cardinals did not have the services of Brian Talent for a few weeks after he broke a bone in his right hand on a play at first base. He was able to keep his arm in shape, so he didn't have an extended rehab. That's the good thing. I think he's been throwing pretty well too since he's been back. He's looked very sharp.
Here's Jonathan Herrera, second baseman. Then you have Gonzalez and Tulowitzki. Nothing in 2. As much as Tony La Russa loves to mix and match, having a second lefty is pretty much essential for him.
I think it's a necessity to get Trevor Miller straight as well. Ease him into better situations. Not every single situation that calls for a left-hander you have to necessarily use Trevor Miller now. I think that'll be good for him. I think Talent will be in this game. I think Tony will use him through Todd Helton no matter where we are in this game. Next inning or this inning, he'll be in to face 4 batters.
Out to visit, 2 balls and 2 strikes.
Never really seen Tony La Russa relaxed with a big lead, have you?
Not in this ballpark. And you can't blame him either with some of the crazy games that we have seen over the years between these 2 teams, especially here in Colorado.
Saw a couple of them last year.
Yes, we did.
2 bullpen implosions last year.
Now they'll look at Talent.
Well, Yachty went out to talk to him first. I thought it was more then about perhaps a mix-up in signs, but maybe Yachty saw something in his demeanor to indicate that he may have some strain, and I'm not sure where it is, but Talent seems to have some kind of strain going on, and we'll have to wait and see what that is, but he is going to leave the game for Eduardo Sanchez, the exciting rookie, and let's just hope this is something minor for Brian Talent.
This week, Fox Saturday Baseball back in primetime. Albert and the Cardinals head to Colorado to take on Troy Tulowitzki and the Rockies. The Royals battle the Rangers as well. And the telecast of Fox Saturday Baseball begins at 6. Check local listings for this game and start time in your area. Prime time and for baseball on Saturday nights has proven to be something that the fans have loved. Ratings have been up. So well, primetime baseball tomorrow as Eduardo Sanchez is getting loose.
Of course, the game is the fans' game, and a lot of things have developed over the years that fans have liked. Interleague play is one, and designated hitter in some ballparks, so I think this is a good move.
So Sanchez can take his time, and we'll head to a timeout as he warms up. So Sanchez will come in. Nobody out here in the bottom of the 8th. The Cardinals leading by the score of 9-3. They'll give him all the time that he needs to get loose. And he'll enter the ball game with a 3-2 count.
I do like the fact that he's taken that time. I mean, he's been out there quite some time now. Most relievers will take, you know, they may take 20, 25 pitches to get ready, and he's thrown a few more than that already. But, you know, a lot of young pitchers really rush it, and they'll throw the 10 or 12 pitches and say, I'm ready, because you just feel everybody looking at you saying, oh, come on now. Will you just get ready? And you feel the tension of that. And Sanchez seems to have gotten through that and took his time, and now he's going to have to come in and throw a strike on pitch one.
So here is that 3-2 pitch to Herrera. Popped up and out of play. And another 3-2 pitch from Sanchez. Here it comes. The fly ball into center field. Well, Rick, so far so good with his bullpen here tonight.
Yeah, I've done a great job. A little concerned about the health of Brian Talent. We had just talked about how important he's going to be over the next month or two to get Trevor Miller back on track and to have a good dual left-hander out of the bullpen. And just got to hope that that is not a major injury situation for Brian Talent. We're just going to have to wait and see.
So Carlos Gonzalez digs in.
This will be a fun matchup.
Gonzalez with an RBI base hit back in the 3rd. He's also grounded out a couple of times. The Rockies with only 5 hits tonight, and that one hit him.
Like it might have hit him in the belt or in the abdomen, and you know he did not know that was a breaking ball. That was such a late breaking sharp pitch that he thought that pitch was not going to hit him, and all of a sudden it just comes in on him and hits him right in the belt.
And Barry Weinberg just moments ago out to check on Molina, make sure that he's all right.
What's going on here?
Yeah. So 1 out, runner at first. And here's Tulowitzki. Troy Tulowitzki. And Rick, how the game has changed when you were playing the great Ozzie Smith, an acrobat out there at shortstop. Tonight you have a guy that's batting cleanup, big body, hits for power.
Most shortstops hit first or second or 8th, and that's about it. I mean, then Ripken maybe became the first guy that you'd see hitting in the 3rd spot, but very few guys with power.
How about that knee buckler from Sanchez?
They're having a hard time picking up the slider. I don't think they get him yet.
Get in line. There's a lot of guys that are saying that right now this year. He's been outstanding.
Right about that.
One ball and 2 strikes, 1 out, runner at first. Wilson Valdez the other day for the Phillies. Always good when you're linked with Babe Ruth. First pitcher to start a game in the field and then finish as the winning pitcher. Wilson Valdez, that hadn't been done since 1921, and Babe Ruth did it.
How about that?
Long game against the Reds the other night.
You saw the video of that game. He was throwing pretty hard.
Yes, he was.
Good movement.
I bring that up because.
And so was Babe Ruth. I haven't seen video of him as a pitcher, but he was pretty good.
I bring it up. Jose Oquendo's a guy that you would think might have done that in the past.
Jose had an outstanding arm. I mean, he had a plus arm as an infielder. Came up as a shortstop with the Mets.
2-2 pitch. Rasmus there to make the catch.
Colby was
And there's 2
virtually
outs.
Colby was virtually ignored, Dan, the first 5 innings of this game, but he's made 5 putouts here in the last 3 innings. Cardinal relievers have done a good job. First it was Batista, and now so far so good from Eduardo Sanchez.
Well, a lot of people have asked about Matt Pagnazzi and why was Cruz brought up. Well, Matt Pagnazzi is now a member of the Rockies organization.
Cardinals had to make a decision to protect players, and when you make a decision to protect your minor leaguers, which you ultimately have to do or you lose them, that means you have to let some guys go on the higher end that you're willing to risk losing, and Matt Pagnazzi was one of them.
Belton pops it up a mile high. Terrio makes the catch. It's good work by Sanchez out of the bullpen. 9-3 as we head to the 9th. Coming up next, Missouri Lottery Cardinals Live. We'll have all the reaction from Tony La Russa. Go inside the Cardinal clubhouse. And here is Lance Berkman.
Second inning of work for Bruce Billings in his major league debut. Scoreless 8th inning for him.
Ooh, Berkman loses the bat into the seats.
And that's a tough souvenir to be diving for. And usually they'll come and they'll give him something else if a batter really likes that as his gamer, but I don't see any movement in that direction.
Berkman didn't even turn around. It was almost like he was afraid to see what happened.
Yeah.
And thank goodness no one was hurt, and he just walked right over to the Cardinal dugout and got a new bat. Time is called. 1 ball, 1 strike. The Giants hold on. They defeat Milwaukee 5-4, and Wilson picked up the save.
Couple of awkward swings by Lance Berkman, like he's having a hard time picking up the pitches a little bit late. Almost like it's kind of a half swing in some ways. Berkman over the years has done a great job, not just hitting, but getting on base. We mentioned in the open, 3 top players active in the game right now, and on base percentage are at the ballpark here tonight and in this game. Pujols, Helton, and Lance Berkman.
It's one of the things that's kind of been overlooked with his start because of the home runs and the RBIs, but his on base percentage and the fact that he can draw a walk.
Leading the National League with that.
The 2-2 pitch. Berkman, base hit. He can look bad on 2 pitches and then do that.
So for people that don't understand on base, he's been on 3 out of 5 times, so that would be 600 today. For his career, 410, trailing only Todd Helton and Albert Pujols. In career leaders on base percentages for active players, Joe Mauer is 4th.
So that'll be it for Lance Berkman. He'll come out of the ball game. Leadoff base hit. And Pete Kozma is there at first. One thing you can't say anymore, Rick, is that the Cardinals system is not producing players.
That's right.
I mean, you look at Salas and Sanchez, Tyler Green, Cosma, Descalso. All those guys have played a vital role at some point during this season.
In fairness, that's something you could have said about this organization a couple of years ago. The arms weren't coming. The position players weren't coming. Impact players. But I think that's changed some, and changing in the right. You know, sometimes you miss in the draft, and it affects you for a while. I think the Cardinals are back on track.
It's so important when you talk about Holiday for $120 million, and who knows with Pujols if he does resign and the amount of money that would cost the team. You have to have in other areas players that are, in baseball terms, inexpensive.
And that's where the minor leagues comes in. You develop a player, and I differ with a lot of my really good friends in the game, and think of probably Matheny and Mabry and guys that talk about how it's much more important to develop a player. I always thought it was important to win in the minor leagues too. Not just develop a player, but to win. I think winning actually does develop players. But that was really a George Kissel thought, that if you win if you guys win an A ball, guess what? Some of you guys are going to get to play Double A next year. If you don't win, you're not going anywhere. And I just think that that's a good thought to put in a young kid's head who's eventually going to be playing for Tony La Russa.
Right. You know, two guys I didn't mention, John Jay and Alan Craig, too. Apparently, Carlos Martinez was impressive the other night at Busch Stadium. You got Shelby Miller. There's a base hit by Green. They'll wave in the runner. So the wild pitch. Cosma moves up. Green drives him in. 10-3.
Tyler Green now 2 for 2 off the bench. Came in for Alan Craig. A base hit the other way past a diving Todd Helton. And the hits just keep coming.
Talked to John Vooch today, the farm director of the Cardinals, and he said the one thing that everybody came away with impressed is not just the fastball with Martinez, but they said a couple of times he was behind in counts and runners on and was able to throw strikes with a breaking pitch.
Good news.
This is popped up. Helton is over near the dugout and out of room. What a night here for Colby Rasmus. Just joined us, Colby, with 4 hits tonight, 2 triples. And he is our Budweiser player of the game. Last Cardinal to have 2 triples in the same game, Adam Kennedy, back in 2008 against Cincinnati. John also indicated, Rick, that it won't be too long before Shelby Miller is starting to move up. They're seeing pretty big progress with him, too.
And there's certain things you look for. And what you mentioned, throwing a breaking ball when you're behind in the count is one of them.
Yes.
And, you know, just because you've got a guy in A ball because he's trying to get over the hump doesn't mean he can't move quickly after that. We're seeing that. We mentioned the starter we're seeing tomorrow. Started out in A ball.
Right.
All of a sudden now he's in the big leagues.
Saw there the last 5-hit night. Brian Ludwig now with San Diego. And same thing with Shelby Miller working on those secondary pitches.
I think of Danny Cox as a guy who was pitching an A ball, went to Double A, and they saw him there pitch a game, and they said, "You don't belong here." They sent him up to where we were in Triple A. He dominated for a game, and they said, "Goodbye, go up to the big leagues," and he just blew past everybody.
Is that right?
I didn't even know who he was. Barely got to know him as a teammate, but when we saw him pitch in AAA, you could tell, and many reasons into that, but you could tell he was ready for the next level.
Yeah. The 2-2. Colby on the ground to Helton. He'll get the lead man back to first, and a double play. There's that arm of Troy Tulowitzki coming into play. The perfect feed from the former Tennessee quarterback, Todd Helton.
Having one of the toughest double plays to turn. Shortstop's got to deliver the ball while the pitcher's still headed to the bag. Bang, bang play. Well executed.
Here's Yadier Molina. A 10-3 St. Louis lead here in the top of the ninth. Cardinals will be back home on Monday afternoon, 3:15 Memorial Day. San Francisco in town. And then we'll see the Cubs. 0-1 pitch. Cubs lose today 4-2 to Pittsburgh. Might be a very, very long year in the Windy City.
Yeah, I would agree. They just can't seem to catch a break, can they?
Left center. Young, great effort, and Molina will trot into second base. So Yadier Molina with a 2-out double.
He'd been the only position player without a hit in this game. And he finally gets his, although he had 3 very good situational hitting at-bats in this game. Now has a double. Good effort. Maybe not the best of angles, but at least a good effort.
It's one of the things that they've talked about, Rick, with Eric Young, and we're going to have time here as Molina will be pinch run for with Kyle McClellan. But they talk about his angles and trying to improve that and trying to find him a position. They know he can run. They want that excitement at the top of their lineup and talking about Eric Young, but you also have to have a position for him.
And center field is very difficult to play at the big league level. A lot of ground,
especially here.
Oh. But great athletes can learn.
Runner at second here in the 9th inning, and Daniel Descalso up.
It's not close and late, it's just late.
And he has chased a couple of pitches up. Not happy with those swings and watching his reaction. The 0-2 pitch to Descalso. Fly ball to left. Gonzalez. Jason Mott coming in when we come back. Jason Mott will make his 21st appearance for the Cardinals, a 2.25 ERA. We saw him the other day, Rick, where he was throwing hard and then incorporated that little cutter.
Yeah, I think he's got some development going on with that pitch, and he's also using it in more counts. And he's got the new facial hair at work, too. A little bit of an homage to Mitchell Boggs, he told us.
Picture was sent to Mitchell to get a look at Tony Cruz, but Mitchell down in the minor leagues, a picture of that was sent to him, and he gave it his stamp of approval. And it is quite the look.
It is quite the look, is right. Throw 99 miles an hour, you can dress how you'd like, I guess.
There's Ty Wigginton. So Cosma is in the game. He's at second. Tyler Green has moved to right. Cruz is behind the plate, and Mott, the first pitch, he hits Ty Wigginton.
Well, nothing on purpose about that. That might have been the cutter that just slipped out of his hands that you were talking about. Ball just got away from Jason Mott. Supposed to be down and away, and it just gets away from him. Bullpen's been very good for the Cardinals. They've hit 2 batters, but have yet to give up a hit.
Sanchez came in relief of Talent. who left on a 3-2 count. Not sure why he was lifted from the game. It was arm, leg, whatever the case may be. Here's Ryan Spilborghs, who is 0 for 3. Give Batista some credit too. Jake Westbrook, who started the game, has a chance to be a winner. 2 balls and no strikes. Three and 0. Right now, Mott can't find the strike zone. He's hit a man and fallen behind 3-0 on Spilborghs.
I am not projecting into the future, but the Cardinals had a blow-up game here in Colorado where they were winning 9-3.
Oh, don't say it.
I just came into my head. It just popped in there. I'm not projecting anything. He's going to get it together. Strike 2 right here.
Off the mask of Cruz.
Fastball down, 6-4-3. How's that, Dan?
There you go.
Feel a little better?
Much better.
Good.
Leave now.
Good.
Three-two pitch. Here it comes. Struck him out.
Good old high hard one. 96 miles an hour up in the zone. Very difficult to get on top of. Way late.
Before Buster Posey was injured, there was talk that they were going to ask him to change his mask. And it's the mask that you see that Cruz wears, more of that hockey style, and going back to the traditional mask, which had a lot of padding on the forehead and the chin area, but not quite as comfortable. But they feel, and I guess some studies were brought up with this, that with all those foul tips that a player has over the course of a career, they prefer to have the older mask than what we see today. Catch made by Tyler Green.
Well, if you're going to trade off comfort and health, I would think health would win out.
Seemed like a pretty easy decision to make. If the Cardinals hold on, they go to 10 games above 500, 31 and 21, and the Rockies would drop to 2 below. Number 99 steps in.
Alfredo Amezaga. So Taguchi used to be 99.
Yes, he did. We saw Mezaga with Florida. It's his second stint now with Colorado. He was here in 2005. He's also been with Pittsburgh and Anaheim. Check swing. 1 ball, 1 strike with 2 outs. Mezaga has been a bench player, good portion of his career, also a backup catcher. Colorado is down to their final strike. And a ground ball to second. This should do it. The Cardinals take game 1 of the series as Colby Rasmus has a big night. 4 hits. And the Cardinals roll to a very easy win here in game one.
Yeah, hits up and down the lineup. A decent start by Jake Westbrook, but 4 zeros out of the Cardinal bullpen. All kinds of good news. Albert with a couple of RBIs. The 2 triples by Rasmus. Big hits in this game.
So 19 hits and 10-3 our final.
Over with an impressive 10-3 Cardinal victory over the Rockies in Colorado. Al Rabowski, the Matt Hungarian, and I breaking it all down here in Missouri Lottery Cardinals Live. Hungo, your thoughts on this win?
Well, anytime you can get 19 hits, you hold the opposition to only 3 runs, and of course the last Rocky hit came in the 3rd. You got a pretty good chance you're going to win. It was a nice victory.
Certainly was. More from Al coming up. Plus, this 3-city, 9-game trip makes its final stop in the Mile High City, and the Cardinals are able to beat up on the Rockies and their struggling ace. Their chances look good with Jake Westbrook on the mound as well. You tell you what has fueled Jake's turnaround this season. And we'll take you back to Denver for player reaction. Plenty of Tony La Russa's post-game thoughts as well. Plus, who's winning this week's Hungo Award? Happy National Great Popsicle Day. What a better way to kick off Memorial Weekend with a cold treat, a purple tongue, and Missouri Lottery. Cardinals Live next.
Welcome to Missouri Lottery Cardinals Live.
Colby Rasmus with a pair of triples in tonight's ball game. This one, the first of his 2, plates the go-ahead run. The Cardinals never look back. They roll to a 10-3 victory tonight over the Rockies in Denver. Hello, everybody, and welcome inside our Fox Sports Midwest studio in St. Louis for another edition of Missouri Lottery Cardinals Live alongside the Mad Hungarian. Al Rabowski, I'm the sort of nice St. Louis, and Pat Paris coming up. We're going to break down the series opener between the Cards and the Rockies, plus Jake the Snake Westbrook and Ubaldo Jimenez have been trending in opposite directions. We'll explain why, and we'll bring you player reaction, Tony La Russa's post-game comments. And Al's going to hand out a Hungo Award tonight. Got a lot of choices, certainly a lot of good candidates. Before we get to all that, though, Al, let's talk about a victory as this road trip just keeps getting better and better.
Well, that's a nice quality this ball club is showing, the ability to win on the road. And, of course, maybe Westbrook wasn't not a quality start, but he was good enough. He picks up his 3rd straight victory. And, of course, the bullpen, they have 4 shutout innings. In the last 6 innings, they keep the Rockies from scoring.
Exactly right. And pitching has been key, certainly, throughout this nice stretch for the Cardinals as they have really been road warriors. Don't forget that we would like to hear you tweet at us. Get involved via Twitter. Our address is @FSMidwest. Send us your questions or comments, and we will answer some of those coming up here on Missouri Lottery Cardinals Live. Much more from Al coming up as well, but let's get right back to Coors Field. Dan McLaughlin catching up a short time ago with Colby Rasmus, our Mid-America Chevrolet Dealers Player of the Game. Dan?
All right, guys, thanks. Let's bring in our player of the game. That's Colby Rasmus. Colby, congratulations. Big night, 4 hits, pair of triples. Must have felt great after the off day.
It definitely did, and especially after this streak I've had this last little bit hasn't been too good to me. So to come out tonight and have a good game here in Colorado is pretty nice.
What kind of adjustments did you make coming into this game tonight with what you were dealing with as you talked about that streak that you had?
Oh, really? I just thought about taking my hands back as far as I could and just trying to just mash the baseball, not think about too much. You know, don't try to stay inside or do whatever. Just go out there, you know, with a good pitcher like Ubaldo, just try to get a good pitch to hit and put a good whack on it, and thankfully some of them fell in.
You know, the first 5 innings, you weren't very busy in the outfield. Then you got busy. What's it like playing at Coors Field in this center field?
I like it. You can see the ball pretty well, especially here at night. Daytime is a little tough. But I like the big outfield. The grass is nice. You know, it don't snake real bad or anything like that. I like it. You know, I feel like it'd be a nice place to play.
Well, great win and nice job tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Dan. Appreciate it.
You got it. That is Colby Rasmus, Mr. Colby Rasmus, and now it's Mr. Rick Horton. Nice game for Colby.
It certainly was, Mr. Dan. Colby was outstanding today. Of course, the Cardinal bats were good from top to bottom, but the 2 triples by Colby Rasmus, big hits in this game.
And the bullpen was outstanding here tonight, but Colby Rasmus, certainly the story of our game.
Yeah, here's triple number one. He hits us in the left center field gap, and we talk about how much fun it is to watch Colby run. And in this park, he's got the ability to do that. The infield is back, so Yadier Molina, situational hitting, is able to get the run in. A little ground ball to short. 7th inning, a little more Colby Rasmus. This time he hits the ball into the right field corner, and even though Spilborghs has a good arm, Rasmus ends up at third again. This time, Yadier Molina lifts a fly ball to center field, gets him in a different way. So Rasmus scoring a couple of times there late, and really outstanding job offensively. And I know it was good for him, and he's happy about getting off that 0 for 20.
Yeah, 19 hits for the offense tonight as we send it back to the studio in St. Louis.
Guys, thank you very much. Nice job as always. Let's pick up first inning highlights. Albert Pujols swinging on 3-0, and he goes the other way. Big hole on the right side, Al, and it's a 1-0 thanks to Albert.
Good to see him drive that ball. And of course, we'd like to see him get the ball in the air a little bit, and he does that a little later on. But in the second inning, it's their turn to get on the scoreboard.
Yeah, Ty Wigginton gets the Rockies on the board, yanks it to left. Troy Tulowitzki scores, and that game is tied at 1. That snaps a 14 1/3 inning shutout streak for Jake Westbrook. And you mentioned how it wasn't quite his night as far as the shutouts innings go, but he certainly did a good enough job, and the scoring's not even close to being over. As Albert Pujols has added again in the third, Ryan Theriot races home to tie it at 2. 9th multi-RB game for Pujols this year, just his 3rd in the month of May, however, but this game was far from over. Later in the 3rd, Alan Craig, the batter, goes the other way with Jimenez fastball, and Pujols scores on Craig's 15th RBI. Cardinals back on top 3-2. You had the feeling it wasn't even close to being done, and it wasn't, because in the 6th, Colby Rasmus up, smokes one into the gap in left center field. Pinch runner Tyler Green easily comes home from first. Rasmus slides in safe at third, and it's the 4th triple of the season for Colby, and his 3rd hit of the night. Redbirds have the lead back 4-3, a lead that they would not relinquish from there after an RBI ground out. Now 5-3, Ryan Theriot tacks on some insurance, singles to right. Spilborghs comes up firing, and he guns Daniel Descalzo out at home plate. Awfully close play here. Iannetta may have tagged a jersey, Al.
Well, here you go. When you try not to run over a catcher, it takes more time to go around him, and just barely does he touch him in the shoulder.
And then a wild pitch. Seen a lot of these this season, especially in April, the Cardinals did. Jimenez unleashes the wild pitch. Kyle Loesch pinch running, beats a throw home, and takes out Ubaldo's legs as well. 7th inning, Rasmus, huge night continues. This one he just rips into the right field corner. 2 more runs come in and makes it 8-3. Rasmus with his 2nd triple of the night. First Cardinal to do that since Adam Kennedy, September 26th of 2008. Also the 3rd career 4-hit game for Rasmus. And the Cardinals would tack on a couple more from there, and they win by the impressive final of 10-3. How about 19 hits on the night for the Cardinals? And they have now won 9 of their last 10. They're back at 10 games over 500, and they're back to a 3.5 game lead in the division as well over Milwaukee, and 4.5 games over the Reds. So the Cardinals really clicking on this road trip so far, Al, as they improved to, 5-2 now on the road trip. And the offense was, well, you expect a lot of offense at Coors Field, but you don't always expect 10 runs at Coors Field.
Well, you'd like to get 10 runs. The only problem is you hope that you can keep the opposition under 9. And, of course, it started out early. It looks like there's going to be a lot of scoring. But 19 hits and your 10 runs. The 19 hits is season high. A lot of extra base hits. You really spread those hits around the lineup, included Kobe's 4 hits. But the biggest part is that you keep the opposition. You get 19, the opposition only gets 5 hits, and their last one's in the 3rd inning. You got a pretty good chance you're going to win this game.
The Cardinals, every one of the position players with at least 1 hit, and some of the guys like a Tyler Green, who comes in the middle as a pinch runner, gets a 2-hit night for him as he stays in the ball game to play second base.
Yeah, you know, he 2 hits and also an RBI. Yachty got a hit eventually, but he had 2 RBIs without getting a hit early in the ball game. There's a good luck on that bunt. And then Colby gets his triple, driving in Tyler Green. And just a hit parade when you get 19 hits, season high. In this ballpark, you know, it just really is a nice game. And, you know, you also didn't need Holiday.
No, although he did pinch hit and he drew a walk, so technically he played in the game, but he did not start. And when he does not start, remember those first 11 games that he had the appendicitis, and so they go 5-6 tonight. I should say the first 11 games he's been out. Yeah, the 11 games there have been 5-6 when he's not in the lineup. When he tonight they go 1-0, despite the fact that he was just a pinch hitter in the lineup. And you look at how many more runs they get, the average they get. Holiday a big part of the offense.
Well, no doubt about it. Remember, at first they went 2-6
right
when he first went out with appendicitis. So when he's back in the lineup, this offense really clicks. It's just nice to see that we haven't needed him recently, but you know, at some point we will.
And somebody has to step up. A lot of times there's been multiple guys step up, but it seems like one guy will have a real breakout game in his absence tonight. It certainly was Colby Rasmus.
Yeah, and recently it's been Descalso, but everyone's getting a chance to contribute. Where would you be without Descalso and Alan Craig, guys that came up that you're really not counting a lot on? They've done an outstanding job, and that really kind of propels this offense because you're not really depending on Holiday or Berkman or Albert. So it's nice to see everyone contributing.
Certainly is. And we've got a tweeter that has tweeted at us, Al. And the first tweet tonight, Tiffer's knee asked, the Cardinals are on fire, no sign of slowing down. They all deserve the hungo this week. Not a question, a statement, an emphatic statement, Al, with 2 exclamation points at the end.
Well, I could not say it any better, but you know, we gave it to the starters, I think, last week. We'll probably give it to one individual, but I get your gist, and I probably think it's a better selection than what we'll come up with.
Oh, I think you'll be just fine, Al, with your selection coming up here in a little bit. Some serious news, of course, back on Sunday. A tornado damaged homes and took the lives of many in Joplin, Missouri, a part of our Cardinals viewing area, a strong part of Cardinal Nation. The Cardinals are donating $25,000 to Convoy of Hope, a Springfield, Missouri-based international disaster relief agency that has been on one of the first on the scene to provide emergency assistance to the people of Joplin. One of the best ways you can help in this disaster is to text the word convoy to 50555, and you'll donate $10 to Convoy of Hope. Still much more to come on this edition of Missouri Lottery Cardinals Live, as the 2 starters tonight having rough nights, but certainly one doing a little better than the other. We'll talk about that next.